The cold darkness of space stretched endlessly in every direction as the alien research vessel Starseeker floated like a dead fish in the cosmic ocean. Inside the ship's cramped control room, Captain Thelvas stared at the flickering displays with growing dread. The numbers didn't lie. Oxygen levels had dropped to 40% and were falling steadily. Power reserves showed less than 6 hours remaining before total system failure. 3 days had passed since their hyperspace engine exploded in a shower of sparks and toxic smoke. Thelvas still remembered the terrible grinding sound it made, before going silent forever. Now they were trapped between star systems, millions of miles from the nearest inhabited world, with no way to call for help except their weakening emergency beacon. The captain's forearms moved across the control panels with practiced desperation, adjusting power distribution to squeeze every last minute from their dying ship. Behind him, 11 other crew members huddled together in the main compartment, their strange alien faces showing the universal expression of fear. They were scientists, not soldiers. They had signed up to study distant galaxies, not to die slowly in the void. Thelvas opened the communication channel once again and spoke into the microphone with a voice that cracked from exhaustion. "This is Captain Thelvas of the research, Vessel Starseeker. We are stranded in Sector 79 Alpha with complete engine failure, 12 souls aboard, oxygen running critical. Please, if anyone can hear this transmission, we need immediate assistance." The response was the same as always, static, empty, mocking static that seemed to laugh at their situation. No one was coming. No one ever came to this forgotten corner of space. The Galactic Council had written off this entire region years ago when pirate attacks became too frequent and too violent. They called it an acceptable loss, a necessary sacrifice to protect more populated areas. The politicians in their comfortable offices had decided that some lives were worth more than others. Research teams like Thelvas and his crew were expendable. The captain looked at his chronometer. Back on his home world, his mate would be preparing their evening meal, probably wondering why his daily communication hadn't arrived. His 3 younglings would be asking when Daddy was coming home from his important work among the stars. They would never know what happened to him. His body would drift in this metal coffin until the ship's orbit eventually decayed into the nearest sun. One of the younger scientists, barely past her adult molting, approached the captain's station. Her voice was soft and frightened. "Captain, the air recycler is making strange noises. I think it's about to fail completely." Thelvas nodded grimly. When the recycler died, they would have maybe 2 hours of breathable air left. After that, they would suffocate together in the darkness, their last breaths fogging the cold windows that showed nothing but endless, uncaring space. He transmitted their distress call one final time, knowing it was hopeless, but unable to stop trying. Somewhere out there beyond the reach of their weakening signal, life continued. Ships traveled safely between worlds, families gathered for meals, children played in gardens under warm suns. But here, in this forgotten pocket of the universe, 12 beings prepared to die alone and unremembered. The static continued its cruel whisper through the speakers, and hope flickered lower than their failing lights. The static suddenly crackled and popped like a dying fire, making everyone on the bridge jump. Then, cutting through the white noise like a knife through cloth, came a voice that made Captain Thelvas freeze in disbelief. "This is Captain Kim from the human vessel Thunder. We received your distress signal and are coming to assist. Please respond if you can hear this transmission." The words hung in the air like something impossible had just spoken. Thelvas stared at the communication panel as if it had grown a second head. Around him, the other crew members looked at each other with expressions of pure shock. Someone whispered a prayer in their native tongue. "Did that voice just say human?" asked the young scientist who had been worried about the air recycler. Her eyes were wide with confusion and something that might have been hope. Thelvas fumbled for the microphone with shaking hands. Humans were barely capable of leaving their own solar system, according to everything the Galactic Council taught. They were newcomers who had only discovered faster-than-light travel a few years ago. Most species considered them primitive creatures, who still fought wars with projectile weapons and ate cooked meat like savages. "This is Captain Thelvas of the Starseeker," he managed to say into the microphone. "Are you really human? How did you get here so quickly?" The response came back immediately, crisp and professional. "Confirmed, Captain, we're human. Our sensors picked up your emergency beacon about 30 minutes ago. We were patrolling this sector when your signal reached us. What's your current status? Patrolling this sector?" That made no sense at all. The Galactic Council had declared this area too dangerous for routine operations. Even their military vessels avoided these coordinates unless absolutely necessary. Yet here was a human ship, casually mentioning patrol duties like it was perfectly normal. "We have complete engine failure," Thelvas replied, his voice gaining strength as the impossible became real. 12 crew members, oxygen at 35% and falling. Power systems failing across all decks. Copy that, Starseeker. We'll be at your position in approximately 47 minutes. Prepare for emergency docking procedures. Our engineering team is already suiting up." The communication channel went quiet, leaving the alien crew staring at each other in stunned silence. Then someone started crying tears of relief, and suddenly, everyone was talking at once in excited whispers. "How is this possible?" asked the chief science officer, an elderly being with silver scales. "Humans don't have ships capable of deep space patrol. Their technology is centuries behind ours." Thelvas shook his head slowly. Nothing about this situation made sense, according to everything they knew about galactic politics and species capabilities. Humans were supposed to be struggling with basic interstellar commerce, not running rescue operations in pirate-infested space. But the voice on the radio had been confident and calm, speaking with the authority of someone who had done this many times before. There had been no hesitation, no uncertainty about their ability to help. Just professional competence that suggested this Captain Kim and his crew were exactly what they claimed to be. "I don't know how it's possible," Thelvas admitted. "But right now I don't care. Someone is coming to save us, and that's all that matters." For the first time in 3 days, the crew of the Starseeker dared to believe they might actually see their families again. The space around the Starseeker suddenly twisted and bent, like someone was folding reality itself. Colors that had no names swirled in impossible patterns as the fabric of space-time rippled outward in perfect circles. Then, with a flash of light that made everyone shield their eyes, the human ship Thunder dropped out of hyperspace. Captain Thelvas had seen thousands of ships exit hyperspace during his long career, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. Most vessels emerged from faster-than-light travel, with shaking and stuttering, their crews struggling to regain control after the violent transition. Ships would drift for several minutes, while their navigation systems recalibrated and their engines cooled down. The Thunder appeared exactly where it intended to be, moving at precisely the right speed, perfectly aligned with the Starseeker's position. It was like watching a master artist place a single brushstroke on a canvas with absolute confidence. "Impossible," whispered the chief science officer, staring at his sensor readings with disbelief. "No one can exit hyperspace with that kind of accuracy. The mathematics alone would require computing power that doesn't exist." But accuracy was just the beginning of what made no sense. The Thunder itself defied everything the aliens thought they knew about human technology. The ship stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull gleaming with a dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange geometric patterns covered its surface, pulsing with soft blue energy that created hypnotic designs across the vessel's massive frame. What truly frightened the alien crew were the weapons. Rows of cannon-like structures lined the Thunder's sides, each one larger than the Starseeker's entire engine room. Missile pods clustered around the ship's middle section, like deadly flowers, while energy projectors that looked nothing like standard galactic designs crowned the vessel's top and bottom surfaces. "That ship could destroy an entire fleet," breathed the young scientist, her voice barely audible. "How do humans have technology like this?" Last month, the Council reported they were still using chemical rockets for local transport. The sensor array began displaying numbers that made Thelvas question his own equipment. The Thunder's power output registered at levels that should have been impossible for a ship that size. Its defensive shields showed energy signatures unlike anything in galactic databases. Most disturbing of all, The vessel's interior scans revealed sections that appeared to exist in folded space, somehow containing more room inside than the external dimensions could possibly allow. Captain Kim's voice cut through their shocked silence, calm and friendly, as if dropping a reality-defying warship into pirate space was the most natural thing in the universe. Starseeker, this is Thunder. We're in position and ready to begin rescue operations. Permission to dock and render. Assistance? Thelvas realized he had been holding his breath and forced himself to respond. Permission granted, Thunder. We're grateful for your help, but I have to ask, how is your ship possible? Our sensors are showing technology that shouldn't exist. A soft chuckle came through the communication system. Captain, right now people need medical attention and emergency repairs. Technical discussions can wait until everyone's safe. We're extending our docking tube now. Through the observation windows, they could see the Thunder moving closer, with movement so smooth and controlled it seemed to float rather than fly. Mechanical arms unfolded from its hull like the legs of some giant metal spider, reaching out to gently embrace the much smaller alien vessel. Whatever else humans are, Thelvas said quietly to his crew, they're not what we thought they were. The docking tube sealed with a soft hiss, and suddenly the Starseeker filled with voices speaking in rapid human languages. The airlock opened, and a team of human engineers flooded into the dying alien vessel like water rushing through a broken dam. Captain Thelvas had expected maybe 3 or 4 repair specialists. Instead, 20 humans in strange worksuits moved through his ship with the efficiency of a military operation. They carried tools that looked nothing like standard galactic equipment, devices that hummed with energy and glowed with soft lights that seemed to pulse with their own heartbeat. Engineer Park, a compact woman with grease-stained hands and bright eyes, immediately headed for the massive hull breach in the cargo bay. The hole was 3 meters wide, jagged and twisted from the sea. Explosion that had crippled their hyperspace engine. By all galactic standards, fixing such damage would require a shipyard, specialized equipment, and at least 2 weeks of careful work. Park pulled out what looked like a simple handheld device, no bigger than an eating utensil. She pointed it at the breach and squeezed a trigger. A beam of pure energy shot out, but instead of cutting or burning, it seemed to grab the twisted metal and pull it back into shape like invisible hands molding clay. "That's impossible," gasped the chief science officer. "Metal doesn't behave that way. You can't just reshape atomic structures with a handheld tool." Park glanced over with a grin. "Tell that to the metal," she said, continuing her work. Within minutes, the gaping hole had become a smooth, seamless section of hull that looked like it had never been damaged at all. Meanwhile, Specialist Lee was performing equally impossible miracles in the engine room. The hyperspace drive lay in pieces, its core components scattered across the floor like the remains of some mechanical explosion. Lee walked among the debris with a scanner that beeped and chirped as it analyzed the wreckage. "Your quantum field generator is completely fried," Lee announced to the gathered aliens. "And your power coupling system has melted into slag, but I think we can work around that." Instead of replacing the broken parts, Lee began connecting strange human devices directly to the ship's main power grid. The equipment looked crude compared to elegant alien technology, all angles and exposed wiring where galactic designs were smooth and hidden. Yet as soon as Lee activated the human additions, the Starseeker's lights flickered and then blazed to life. "Impossible," whispered Thelvas. "Our power systems were completely dead. How are you generating energy from nothing?" Lee shrugged casually, while adjusting something that looked like a metal box held together with metallic tape. "Zero-point energy extraction. We tap into the quantum foam that exists everywhere in space. It's not nothing. There's actually infinite energy all around us. You just need to know how to ask nicely." Throughout the ship, other human engineers were performing similar miracles. They sealed air leaks with spray-on substances that hardened into metal stronger than the original hull. They repaired the life support system by plugging in devices that somehow cleaned and recycled air better than the aliens' original equipment. Most amazing of all, they worked with cheerful efficiency, chatting and joking with each other, as if bringing dead starships back to life was just another day at the office. When alien crew members asked questions about their techniques, The humans answered with simple explanations that made no sense according to known science. Within 3 hours, the Starseeker was not just functional. It was running better than when it had left the shipyard. The mess hall of the Thunder looked nothing like the sterile dining areas found on galactic vessels. Instead of cold metal tables and recycled protein cubes, the humans had created something that felt almost like home. Warm lighting cast gentle shadows on walls decorated with pictures of Earth. Blue oceans, green forests, and cities that sparkled like jewels under alien stars. Captain Kim sat across from Thelvas, sharing what she called real food from sealed containers that somehow kept meals hot and fresh for months. The alien captain tentatively tried something called beef stew, surprised by flavors that were rich and complex compared to the bland nutrition paste his crew usually ate during long missions. "This is incredible," Thelvas said, taking another spoonful. "Your people eat like this regularly?" Kim smiled and nodded. "Food is important to humans. We believe sharing a good meal brings people together, even different species." She gestured around the dining area where human crew members sat with aliens from the Starseeker, everyone talking and laughing despite the language barriers. "Captain Kim," Thelvas said carefully, "I have to ask something that's been bothering me. How did you find us so quickly? This sector is supposed to be empty except for pirates and smugglers." Kim's expression grew more serious as she set down her eating utensil. "That's exactly why we're here, Captain. Someone needs to patrol these forgotten areas of space. The Galactic Council has written off entire regions, calling them acceptable losses. But the beings who live and work in these areas aren't acceptable losses to us." The alien captain felt his heart skip a beat. "You're saying humans regularly patrol this area, but the Council reports say your species barely has functional interstellar travel." A bitter laugh escaped Kim's lips. "The Council sees what we want them to see. While they debate and form committees, real beings are dying out here in the dark. We decided to do something about it instead of just talking." Kim stood and walked to a large display screen on the wall. With a few touches, it showed a star map of the local galactic region. Dozens of green dots appeared scattered across previously empty space, each one pulsing steadily. "Each of those dots represents a human patrol vessel," Kim explained. "We have ships stationed in every sector the major governments have abandoned. When someone sends a distress call, we respond." Thelva stared at the display in shock. There had to be at least 50 ships shown on the map, covering thousands of light years of supposedly empty space. "How long has this been going on?" "About 8 months now," Kim said casually, as if organizing a secret fleet was no big deal. "We've answered over 300 distress calls, saved hundreds of ships and thousands of lives from dozens of different species. Medical emergencies, pirate attacks, engine failures, navigation problems, you name it, we've probably dealt with it." The alien captain felt dizzy as the implications hit him. "The Council has no idea you're doing this?" "The Council thinks we're primitive newcomers who can barely manage trade routes," Kim replied with a knowing smile. "They're not completely wrong. We are newcomers, but being new doesn't mean being helpless." She touched the screen again, and it showed rescue statistics that made Thelvas gasp. Ship after ship, species after species, all saved by human intervention in areas where no help should have existed. "Why?" Thelvas asked quietly. "Why risk your ships and crews for strangers?" Kim looked directly into his alien eyes with an expression of absolute sincerity. "Because someone has to watch the dark spaces, Captain. Everyone deserves to make it home safely." The peaceful moment in the mess hall shattered like glass when emergency alarms began screaming throughout both ships. Red warning lights bathed everything in an ominous glow as the Thunder's bridge crew announced incoming vessels through the communication system. Captain Thelvas felt his blood turn to ice water. He recognized those alarm patterns from his worst nightmares, the sound that meant pirates had found them. His hands shook as he grabbed the nearest communication panel and called his bridge crew on the Starseeker. "Report," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "3 ships just dropped out of hyperspace," came the terrified reply from his navigation officer. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies. It's the Crimson Claw pirates, Captain. They're demanding immediate surrender." The cruel voice of the pirate commander filled both ships' communication systems, speaking in the universal trade language with an accent that dripped menace and violence. "Attention vessels. This is Commander Vex of the Crimson Claw. You will immediately surrender all cargo, research data, and valuable crew members. Resistance will result in your immediate destruction." Thelvas closed his eyes in despair. The Crimson Claw were among the most vicious pirates in known space. They didn't just steal cargo, they took prisoners to sell as slaves and destroyed ships for sport. Worse, his research data contained breakthrough discoveries in quantum physics that could revolutionize weapons technology. In the wrong hands, it could tip the balance of power across the entire galaxy. "Captain Kim," Thelvas said desperately into his communicator, "you need to run. Take your ship and escape while you still can. Our research is too dangerous to fall into pirate hands, but there's no point in both of us dying here." The response from Captain Kim was not what he expected. Instead of panic or fear, her voice carried something that sounded almost like excitement mixed with professional interest. "Captain Thelvas, please have your crew secure themselves for combat operations. Make sure everyone is strapped in tight and away from any loose objects that might become dangerous." "Combat operations?" Thelvas stared at the communication panel in confusion. "Captain Kim, there are 3 pirate vessels out there. Each one is heavily armed and designed for battle. Your ship may be advanced, but surely you're not planning to fight them." Kim's laugh came through the speakers, warm and confident. "Captain, pirates have been a problem in this sector for months. We've been looking forward to having a conversation with the Crimson Claw about their business practices." Through the observation windows connecting the 2 ships, Thelvas could see the Thunder's crew moving with incredible speed and efficiency. Human crew members ran through corridors with purpose, not panic. They secured equipment, sealed blast doors, and took positions at control stations with the smooth coordination of people who had done this many times before. "Battle stations, all hands to battle stations," announced the Thunder's internal communication system. "This is not a drill. Repeat, all hands to battle stations." But what struck Thelvas most was the mood of the human crew. They weren't afraid or desperate like his own people. Instead, they moved with the focused energy of professional soldiers who had been given a job they knew how to do well. Captain Kim's voice came through one more time, and now Thelvas could clearly hear the anticipation in her tone. "Pirates picked the wrong ships to threaten today, Captain. Stay secure and watch what happens when humans get annoyed." The massive rescue ship called the Indomitable had been floating peacefully in space just moments before. To any outside observer, it looked like nothing more than a civilian vessel designed to help people in distress. The Zalithian pirates had made a terrible mistake, thinking this was going to be another easy target. Captain Rodriguez watched the pirate ships approaching. On his screen, their weapons already charging for what they thought would be a simple attack. The bridge crew remained calm, their hands moving across control panels with practiced efficiency. They had done this dance many times before. "All stations, prepare for combat transformation," the captain announced quietly. His voice carried no fear, only cold determination. What happened next would have shocked any alien species watching from a distance. The Indomitable began to change. Panels that had appeared to be simple hull plating suddenly slid away, revealing weapon ports that had been completely hidden from view. Sections of the ship that looked like cargo bays opened up to show massive gun batteries. The transformation was so smooth and quick that it seemed almost magical. The Zalithian pirates realized too late that they had stumbled into something far beyond their understanding. This wasn't just a rescue ship with some basic defensive weapons. This was a human warship, disguised as a civilian vessel, and now it was showing its true nature. Human military doctrine had evolved over centuries of warfare on Earth and among the stars. Every human ship, even those designed for peaceful purposes, carried enough firepower to level a small moon. The philosophy was simple: if you're going to space, you better be ready for anything. The first weapons to emerge were the energy cannons. These weren't the crude plasma bolts that most alien races used in combat. Human energy weapons had been refined through generations of conflict, designed to cut through any known defensive system. The beams that shot out from the Indomitable were focused to surgical precision, each one aimed at critical systems on the pirate vessels. The Zilithian shields, which had protected them against countless other species, simply evaporated under the human assault. The energy beams sliced through their defensive barriers like a hot knife through butter, leaving the pirate ships completely exposed. But the energy weapons were just the beginning. The Indomitable also carried kinetic weapons that fired solid projectiles at speeds approaching the speed of light. These weren't ordinary bullets or missiles. They were dense metal rods that had been accelerated to incredible velocities using magnetic fields. When these projectiles hit their targets, the results were devastating. The kinetic energy released was so enormous that entire sections of the pirate ship simply ceased to exist, turned into clouds of superheated gas and metal fragments that glowed briefly in the darkness of space. The engagement was over, almost, before it began. In less than 3 minutes, what had been a small fleet of confident pirates was nothing more than expanding debris fields drifting through space. The Indomitable had barely needed to change course during the entire battle. As the last pieces of wreckage tumbled away into the void, the human ship began its transformation back to peaceful appearance, weapon ports closing and hull panels sliding back into place. The bridge of the Indomitable fell quiet after the battle ended. Debris from the destroyed pirate ships drifted past the viewports like metallic snow against the starfield. Captain Chen stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the aftermath of their swift victory. The rescued alien passengers were still processing what they had just witnessed. Ambassador Keth, the Zilithian diplomat they had saved, approached the captain with obvious confusion written across his features. His species had always prided themselves on understanding galactic politics, but what he had just seen didn't fit into any framework he knew. "Captain," Keth began carefully, "your ship. It's not what it appears to be, is it?" Chen turned to face the ambassador, a slight smile crossing his weathered face. "No, it's not, and neither are we, really." He gestured toward the viewport where space had returned to its peaceful appearance. "What you've just witnessed is something most of the galaxy doesn't know exists." The other rescued passengers gathered around, their curiosity overcoming their fear. Representatives from a dozen different species listened as Chen began to explain humanity's hidden role in galactic affairs. "While your governments sit in council chambers arguing about territorial boundaries and trade agreements," Chen continued, "people are dying in the empty spaces between your worlds. Pirates, slavers, and worse things hunt in the dark corners, where no official patrol ships ever venture." He walked over to a star chart displaying the local sector. Red dots marked recent pirate attacks, while green indicators showed successful rescue operations. The pattern was clear to anyone who looked closely. Your species form committees to discuss the problem. They debate jurisdiction and funding for months while more innocent people disappear. Humans got tired of waiting for official solutions. Chen's voice carried a hint of frustration that had been building for years. "So we decided to do something about it ourselves." The revelation sent ripples of surprise through the group of survivors. They had assumed the rescue was either a coincidence or perhaps part of some official military operation. The truth was far more complex and impressive. Chen explained how the Shadow Fleet had begun almost by accident. A group of human merchants and explorers had started helping stranded travelers they encountered during their journeys. Word spread quietly through underground networks, and soon grateful survivors were contributing credits and resources to expand the operation. "We don't answer to any government or corporation," Chen said. "Our funding comes from people whose lives we've saved and others who believe in what we're doing. Our crews are volunteers who signed up because they wanted to make a difference." The Indomitable was just one ship in a network that spanned multiple sectors. Hundreds of vessels, all disguised as civilian craft, patrolled the dangerous regions, where official authorities feared to venture. Some were modified cargo haulers like theirs, others were converted passenger liners or research vessels. Each ship maintained its cover identity while carrying enough firepower to handle serious threats. The crews trained constantly, knowing that the next distress signal might lead them into anything from a simple mechanical failure to a full-scale pirate ambush. "We've saved thousands of lives over the past few years," Chen concluded, "and we'll keep doing it as long as there are people who need help and others willing to provide it. The damaged research vessel, Quantum Dawn, slowly made its way through space, flanked by 2 human escort ships that had appeared within hours of the rescue. Captain Vexara stood on the bridge, watching the stars pass by while their mind processed everything that had happened in the past day. Just 24 hours ago, Vexara had been leading a routine scientific expedition to study ancient stellar formations. Now they were returning home with a completely different understanding of how the galaxy actually worked. The attack by the Nexus Syndicate should have ended with their crew becoming slaves, or worse. Instead, they had witnessed something that challenged everything the Galactic Confederation thought it knew about humanity. The human rescue ship Indomitable hadn't just saved them from pirates. It had revealed the existence of an entire shadow network that operated beyond the reach of official galactic politics. Captain Chen's words kept echoing in Vexara's mind. Humans had been quietly protecting travelers and merchants throughout the outer sectors for years, asking for nothing in return except the chance to help. Vexara walked over to their communications officer, a young crew member who was still shaken by their recent ordeal. "Send a priority message to Confederation." "Command," they ordered. "Tell them I'm requesting an immediate audience with the full council upon our return." The officer looked surprised. "Should I include the reason for the request, Captain?" "Tell them it concerns a critical reassessment of humanity's role in galactic affairs." Vexara paused, choosing their words carefully. "And that what I have to report will change how we view our relationship with Earth." As their ship continued toward the nearest starbase, Vexara began preparing for what would likely be the most important presentation of their career. The Galactic Confederation had always treated humans as newcomers to interstellar civilization, a young species that needed guidance from older, more experienced races. That perspective was completely wrong, and Vexara now had proof. The evidence was overwhelming. The sophisticated technology hidden aboard seemingly civilian vessels, the coordinated response network that could deploy rescue ships across multiple sectors, the military precision of their operations combined with their humanitarian mission. Humans weren't struggling to find their place in galactic society. They had already carved out a role as its protectors. Vexara thought about the other species in the Confederation, each focused on their own territories and interests. The Zilithians worried about trade routes that passed through their space. The Crystalline Collective concerned themselves with mining rights and resource allocation. The Ethereal Union spent most of their time in philosophical debates that had little practical application. Meanwhile, humans were out there in the dangerous empty spaces, risking their lives to save people they had never met and would probably never see again. They did it without official recognition, government funding, or political support. They did it simply because it was the right thing to do. When Vexara reached the Confederation homeworld, they would stand before the Council and tell them the truth. Earth deserved more than membership in the galactic community. It deserved recognition as one of its most valuable contributors. The shadow fleet that humans had built represented something the Confederation had tried to create for decades. Through official channels, a true peacekeeping force that prioritized lives over politics, the galaxy needed to know that humanity had already become what other species only talked about becoming: